Thank you, Diane. It was very settling. Can everyone hear me okay? That good? Okay. Welcome. Welcome to the North Chapel on this first Sunday in November. Beautiful sunny day. Welcome as we come down off of last week's Halloween sugar rush, as the hills come off their fiery October blaze and don a palette of rust and evergreen and bits of amber. As we enter the relative quiet of stick season and anticipate the first snowflakes of winter. Preparing for the cold and shorter days ahead, this month's theme asks, what sustains us? And we hope this time together may illuminate some answers within ourselves. I certainly look forward to Leon's thoughts on the matter in his reflection today. Thank you. For any children here today, Chloe is back with us in the front here. She will be leading spiritual exploration in a little bit. So I'm sure that will be a wonderful time together. A reminder to just silence your cell phones, and also that there's no traditional coffee hour at this point, but the day looks like it might afford some visiting out in the sun later, so feel free to do that. There are, of course, many activities and events going on, and I encourage you to read your order of service and check out the church's website for all of that news. Other announcements, I believe Judy had something to share? Come on up.
Good morning. I am sharing this thought with Leon. Brought up a topic last week about a project that we're beginning here, and I just wanted to give a little history. This project kind of had its roots in the Children and Youth Task Force that we put together about 2 years ago. And it consisted of 4 members of North Chapel, Leon, Geraldine, myself, and Chris Bartlett, along with about 10 other community members who were either involved directly working with kids or in some form academically and or socially or professionally. So it covered a huge variety of topics, but and the expansiveness of the needs and the wants and the hopes were almost unmanageable at some points. But at any rate, what happened as a result of this task force is what Leon will present.
I asked Judy to make the announcement because she was in the committee, and she told me no. I hate speaking in front of people, and I said, if you get up there and just scream, I'll fill in the blanks. So that's great. So thank you, Judy. It's great. The Brave Light Youth Exchange Project started with the Children and Youth Task Force 2 years ago. About 10 people got together in a room, and we met several times over the course of a year with area youth leaders, some youth, including Allison Bradley and Lexi Fowler, among others, to discuss what we could do with the youth. And what came out of that was the Brave Light Youth Exchange Project. We're going to gather about 25 kids from this area, 25 kids from outside of Boston, and we're going to agree to spend 3 weekends together, total of 9 days. 3 days here in the Upper Valley, 3 days in the Boston area, and 3 days on Star Island. This will all be free of charge, except for registration, which will be $40,000. I'm just kidding. It'll be free of charge for everyone, except for a small registration fee. We will require the commitment and the taking seriously of what it means to be together in a world that gives us considerable challenges. So it's going to cost about $120,000 to do this program. We've raised most of that money already through grants. I couldn't be happier with the leadership of the Brave Light program and of North Chapel in general. I'm so looking forward to making this a beautiful success. Thank you, Judy, for being part of the beginning of it. Thank you, Chris, for getting the ball rolling, and thank you, everyone, for being a part of it.
Sorry. I need a little more help in the verticality department. There we go. Thank you, that's exciting. As a mother of a 9th grader, that's got special meaning to me, so thank you. Other announcements? I think that's it.
Good morning, and good Sunday. Today is November 7th, and the title of this morning's reflection is The Rising Sun Still Sustains Us. Something lays down and something rises at the same time. The rising sun is our youthful spirit, the brave light within us all. It is the light of gratitude, a light of memory, and a light of hope. This brave light within us is also a light of genuine possibility, a possibility that is in our hands. To all souls, I say good morning. It is good to be together. And good morning, too, to sweet November. It's good to see you again, old friend. The frosty edges of the first parts of your days, your gray-orange sunsets that happen so early. Summer spoils me so that I pretend as long as I can throughout the autumn, clinging to the last warm days that remain, but your presence is undeniable now. I saw the sleet come down the other day. I saw a light snowfall on the summit of a mountain, just a dusting. Quietly, you're whispering to us now, winter is here. Technically not yet, right? I don't want to get in trouble for saying that. But I think you know what I mean. There's a theologian, a man named Alan Watts, who's a strong influence on the way I see the world. And he said something that I thought was very good. He wanted to make sure that he's not doing his theological work for money. He's not in it for gain. He said this: I want to make one thing absolutely clear. I'm not a Zen Buddhist, although he speaks a lot about Zen Buddhism. I am not advocating Zen Buddhism, although he speaks a lot about Zen Buddhism. And I'm not trying to convert anyone to it. I have nothing to sell. I am an entertainer, he says. That is to say, in the same sense that when you go to see a concert and you listen to someone play Mozart, he has nothing to sell except the sound of the music. He doesn't want to convert you to anything. He doesn't want you to join an organization in favor of Mozart's music above, say, Beethoven's. I approach you in the same spirit as a musician with her piano or a violinist with his violin. I just want you to enjoy a point of view that I also enjoy. Alan Watts wants us to see things his way for a moment, not to best us in an argument and not to help him win the war of some kind, but in order to rejoice in the splendor and in the grandeur and in the beauty of life. No scheme, no subscription, no scandal. No strings attached save those sounding on the piano or those singing on the violin. He wants to engage with us non-transactionally. Either we fall and rise with the music, or we walk away unmoved, or we walk away untouched, or we walk away oblivious. 51 years ago, this is vanity, so make sure the framing is right. 51 years ago, Joni Mitchell walked away and walked by, but she was neither unmoved nor obvious, or nor oblivious to the music that surrounded her. She was not oblivious when she wrote a song in 1970 that she called "For Free." She had been walking through a windy city. It's hard to tell which city it was. She was busy with the affairs of life, and she tells her own story in this way. She says, "I was standing on a noisy corner, waiting for the walking green," right, the streetlight. Across the street he stood, and he played real good on his clarinet for free. And he was playing like a fallen angel, and playing like a rising star, and playing for a hat full of nothing to the honking of the cars. And nobody stopped to hear him, though he played so sweet and high. They knew he had never been on their TV, so they passed his sweet music by. It's very different when you get famous. People stop and listen, and then they applaud. Sometimes, though, only because they know that they are supposed to, not because their hearts have been moved or touched. Joni Mitchell was already famous in 1970. By then, she almost never played anything for free. She was playing for money for a living, and she was doing very well. In the same song, she compares herself to this penniless musician. She says, "Now me, I play for fortunes and those velvet curtain calls. And I've got a black limousine with 2 gentlemen escorting me through the halls. And I'll play if you have the money, or if you're a friend to me. But the one-man band by the quick lunch stand, he played real good for free." Not too many years later, her career really took off, and it was reflected in these same lines. And she said, "Now me, I play for fortunes and those velvet curtains calls. I've got a black limousine and 16 gentlemen, not 2, escorting me through these halls." Joni Mitchell was cashing in. After long years of trying and long miles on an arduous path, the money was finally coming her way. Of course, I'm not making any judgments. There is no crime and there is no foul. There is no guilt and no shame in making money for one's art, for the beautiful things that we put out into this world. It's funny that I feel like I have to say that. It's strange to me that in our culture how opposing things are true. It's strange that it's possible to feel guilt and shame for making too much money for one's own artistry. At the same time, it is possible to feel guilt and shame for not making enough. To be a struggling artist. What's up with that? What's up with guilt and shame that they have such a grip on us? Sometimes that they conquer us, staking such claim and claiming such purchase. Now, I'm fascinated with this question, but it perhaps is a matter for another time. What is important this morning is less about what Joni Mitchell was expressing and more about what Alan Watts was expressing, even though both were expressing themselves in different perspectives on the selling of beauty. Joni Mitchell was reminding us too often that we walk by the beauty that is ours for free, having too well and perhaps foolishly learned the lessons that we only get what we pay for in life. On the other hand, Alan Watts is reminding us that it is possible to be religiously passionate without being proselytizing. He said, I'm not trying to convert anyone. I have nothing to sell. I am an entertainer, which is to say that he has nothing whatsoever to exchange for money. He just wants us to share in his perspective, for he envisions the world uniquely, and he wants us to see the world the way he sees the world for just a while. It is beautiful to see the world uniquely. Each one of us carries our share of that beauty. Now, the weight of the world tells us otherwise, right? It's the weight of the world, its sharp sides, its bleakness, the frost of its outer edges, they bid us conform to expectation. Dim down your brilliance, dampen your splendor, your grandeur, your beauty, the power of your voice, and conform to the contours of the world that has been prepared for you. November, when you are not careful, sometimes you teach this much to me, as you lay the sun down so low on the horizon. The days are so much shorter now when we leave them in your care. The arc of the sunrise to the sunset shallows to the south of us. The sun steps a few rungs lower on the ladder that it uses to climb up into the sky. And yet in its brief light, there is still enough to keep us going. It's brief light. It's brave light, which is all of us. It would be difficult for me to try to explain to you what my church youth group was like. If I were a more honest man, I would just share the cheer that we used to gather our spirits together before our weekend conferences. Weekend conferences not dissimilar to the ones that Brave Light is planning right now. I would share that cheer with you, but it is profanity-laced and hardly appropriate for the maintenance of a sense of ministerial integrity. Suffice it to say that it made us laugh and it made us smile and it held us together. It kept us fierce and bitter and optimistic. I don't know how I would have fared in life without my church youth group. Throughout my life so far, as far as I have known it, there have been three men that have been important to me. My father, of course, Leon Latimer Dunkley Sr., who despite his faults, the faults that have become more visible to me since the time of his passing, he remains one of the most spectacular people I've ever known. My minister, Harold Dean, who might have known your father, David. My minister has whose ministry was a ministry of memory and hope that I treasure most powerfully. And a man named Don Schoenwolf. Don was the leader of the youth group. He was a member of the church. He and his family have been incredibly important to me. I say that Don was the leader of the church, but he was really, the church group, but he was really no such thing. When we gathered each Sunday night for youth group, he didn't have a lesson plan. There was no curriculum that he was following. He never took attendance. There were never any evaluations of any kind, save the ever-deepening, ever-maturing quality of our experience in life and our commitment to travel in life together. Our lives were forged together by starlight and soul shine, and by Mrs. Gibson's dinner lasagnas that she would drop off on Friday night that we would eat cold for breakfast at 4 a.m. on Saturday morning. By the endless conversations about the meaning of life. Many of us are still quite close. We have become family to one another. Not because we always got along or because we genuinely liked each other, we did not. But because we always tried to get along and because we genuinely loved each other. In fact, some of the people that I didn't like then are the people that I love most now. We sang so much music together, James Taylor and Joni Mitchell, The Grateful Dead and Bob Dylan, The Beatles, Richie Havens, Joe Cocker, Joan Baez, and of course, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. We were young and we sang, 24 years ago I've come into this life. The song of a woman and a man who lived in strife. He was tired of being poor, and he wasn't into selling door to door, and he worked like the devil to be more. And we looked forward to being that old when we sang, darling, be home soon. I couldn't bear to wait an extra minute if you dawdled. And darling, be home soon. It's not just these few hours, but I've been waiting since I toddled for the great relief of having you to talk to. For the great relief of having you to talk to. Now, a quarter of my life has almost passed. We were still in our teens, and that was 30 years ago now. Now we look back on being that young. Now, I grew up as a Unitarian Universalist. It was a complicated religious path, contradictory. We professed that we had no dogma, no religious beliefs that we had to embrace. We thought a lot of ourselves. We thought that we were above the fray somehow. We might have even thought that we were better than other people, because it seemed like that because we had no religious mandate. There was no litmus test. We were very proud of that. But when you think about it, not having a religious dogma is kind of a dogma, in a way. Now, there are some central beliefs that are core to this faith and have always been. And that part about the dogma has troubled Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists for a long time. In fact, 134 years ago, a Unitarian named William Channing Gannett. So Unitarian Universalism wasn't always Unitarian Universalism. It used to be Unitarianism on one side and Universalism on the other. And then in 1961, they joined, largely for financial reasons. They agreed basically theologically, but there were some differences. The Unitarians were sort of upper crust, upper class. The Universalists were more farming types. So in Vermont, you'll see a wash of Universalist churches, whereas in Boston, you'll see a lot of Unitarians. I think the colloquialism that they both believed in the idea of universal salvation, but for different reasons. The Universalists thought that God was too good to damn anyone, and the Unitarians thought that they were too good to be damned. That still follows us, by the way. In any case, 134 years ago, a minister named William Channing Gannett offered his statement of faith entitled Things Most Commonly Believed Among Us Today. He offered this to the 1887 meeting of the Western Unitarian Conference in Chicago. His statement was adopted by a vote of 59 to 13. We like to vote on things even way back then. Even back then, we really liked to vote. Reverend William Channing Gannett's statement began as follows: We believe that to love the good and to live the good is the supreme thing in religion. We hold reason and conscience to be the final authorities on matters of religious belief. And we honor the Bible and all inspiring scripture, old and new. Even back at the end of the 19th century, we had already transcended the Western religious doctrine that assumed the centrality of Christian and then subsequently Judeo-Christian belief systems. In the late 19th century, the Unitarians were becoming broader in their religious perspectives, and 20th century theologians like Alan Watts would help us to continue on this path. We came to see the beauty of faith systems all around the world, and yet we still held closely to our own and our own quite Christian roots. The statement by William Channing Gannett further expresses, we revere Jesus and all holy souls that have taught men truth, righteousness, love as prophets of religion. And yes, the language was men back then. Of course, as you know, this was the limit of language. We knew better, but we did not say better. and how we tell our story really matters. In any case, Channing continued, affirming a whole host of different religious tenets. It would be fun to go through them and see how they do and do not apply these days. Channing went on for a good long while, but in our youth group, we sat around and we talked endlessly, just like Channing Gannett did in his time. We talked endlessly and we argued and we debated about gender and sexuality, about war and nuclear weapons, about nuclear power and its grave hazards, about race and cultural differences, but we never talked specifically about William Channing Gannett. We didn't know who he was, even though our faith was partly shaped by him. Mostly we worked as hard as we could to get to know each other truly and to discover what is important in life and to choose our best ways forward while having as much fun as we possibly could. Now, the thing that held us together was a love for one another, even if we didn't understand it. And that love held us together. It kept alive in us a sense of hope. So when things got bad and times got hard, we had each other to turn to. One of my dearest friends, someone who I would call my sister in life, is a woman named Tristan Boyer-Binns. Tristan is 4 years younger than me, and she had a dear, she taught me more about what it means to care for other people than anyone I know, really. She had a great loss in her life, and the only thing I knew that I could do to help her was to stand by her and to stand with her and to sing to her when I could. So I wrote a song for her called Wishing on You, trying to return some light and some beauty to her life after she suffered a great loss. She's an equestrian, so it was a lot about horses. And we would get together and we would sing these songs together. The songs that other people had written, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, and the songs that we had written ourselves and that we had written for one another. I wrote a song for my first love in life. It was in the key of D. It was called Paint Me a Song. It was beautiful. I don't remember the words. The painter loves her paint, loves her picture frame. The painter loves her paint, loves her picture frame, but she'll always need a canvas to cry on. She's just a girl painting her own tear in her eye. It's a really pretty song. And then I encountered a friend who was also a musician, who had a crush on me, but I was still in love with this first love of mine. So she wrote a song about me that was not kind, that was based precisely on those same chords. And that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that her song was more beautiful than mine. One day I'll bring her here and maybe she'll play it for you. All in all, what we did was poke fun at one another and try to keep ourselves alive in hope. Hope is a beautiful, tall thing. It's important for us not to lose sight of this. Tom Petty wrote a song that we used to play. It said, somehow, somewhere, somebody must have kicked you around some. Might know this song. Tell me why you want to lay there and revel in your abandon. He said, honey, it don't make no difference to me. Everybody's got to fight to be free because you don't have to live like a refugee. He wrote that song in 1979. Things have changed a lot since. I don't think he would write the same song today. By the end of 2020, there were about 82 million people who had been forcibly displaced in the world. And a quarter of them were refugees. So there are about upwards of 26 million refugees, and about half of these people our children in our world today. It's a lot. I don't think that Tom Petty would have written the song in the face of these facts. How can we say things like, you don't have to live like a refugee, when so very many of us do have to live this way? This morning, I raise a set of questions of myself. What things must we commonly believe among us today in order to seek justice in the world, in order to seek justice in these days? Who must we be? How must we strive? Who must we strive to become? Who must we remember that we already are? How do we hold on to hope? Now, I would like to close this morning with a story about a 9-year-old Syrian girl, an unaccompanied minor named Amal. Amal in Arabic means, does anyone know? Amal in Arabic means hope. Little Amal is 3.5 meters in height. That's right. This little girl is 11.5 feet tall. This hope named Amal is the child of a man named Amir Nazir Zuabi. He sends through this child such brave light into the world. He says, I was born in East Jerusalem in a tough part of town, in between Bet Hanina, a neighborhood, and the Sufat refugee camp. I am a mixed child. This means that my mother is Jewish and my father is Palestinian. So the refugee experience runs deep in the DNA of my family. When my Jewish grandparents were fleeing Europe because of World War II, they came to Palestine and drove out the other part of my family and drove them into exile. When I was 14, I stumbled into a theater show in this tough part of town and I fell in love. It was this love that helped him to create hope, the hope that he calls Amal. Amal is a puppet. She's a towering puppet. She's a beautiful and magnificent young girl. She's arresting. She's instantly compelling, heart and mind and soul. One can only look up at her. She is fantastic. Amal was created by the Handspring Puppet Company in South Africa. They're very closely related to the Bread and Puppet theater company up here in Vermont, in Glover, Vermont. Amal is a refugee. She is in deep need of sanctuary. And in order to complete her journey, Amal must walk 5,000 miles. This is a theater project that takes place in real life. The walk, as it's called, begins on the border of Turkey and Syria and moves through Greece, through France and Belgium, Italy, crosses the Channel into England and goes from Dover to Manchester. As this puppet walks, there is a person inside of the puppet themselves who is on stilts, who is walking about 6 feet above the ground, controlling her legs. There is a person controlling her right arm, and another person controlling her left arm, and another person controlling her head and facial expressions. All of them have calls to one another so that the puppet can turn to greet children, can stand and salute, can wave at the rising and the setting of the sun. Amal, or Hope, walks through these villages. She is a traveling festival of art, and she returns to us some of the beauty that we see in the world. It's a fascinating thing. There's a TED Talk about it. I invite you to check out the TED Talk so that you can see that the children are running out of the schools to hold the hand of Hope as she walks through their town. Good morning, sweet November. And even as the sun lays low, your brave light is enough to keep our hope alive. In these days that are getting cold and frosty and short, may we keep the fire of hope alive within us for all of our days. May we remember these brave lights that are burning right here before us and their connection to the brave light in our own souls. May it be so. Blessed be. And amen.